in the Torah. Okay, Leviticus comes from Levi. There's a lot of things that with regard to the priestly priestly class, but the priesthood with regard to sacrifices, conduct of the priests, things that they are allowed to do, as well as their care too in terms of their sustenance. So we'll read the reading. Okay, the Lord said to a reading from the book of Leviticus. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, if someone has on his skin a scab or pustule or blotch, which appears to be the sore of leprosy, he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of the priests among his descendants. If the man is leprous and unclean, the priest shall declare him unclean by reason of the sore on his head. The one who bears the sore of leprosy shall keep his garments rent and his head bare, and shall muffle his beard, and he shall cry out, unclean, unclean. As long as the sore is on him, he shall declare himself unclean. Since he is in fact unclean, he shall dwell apart, making his abode outside the camp. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So we have this reading from Leviticus, and to have leprosy at that time, and really Jesus' time too. This is going back to centuries before Jesus. Would put the person on the outskirts of society. Contact with other humans was limited, and Jesus' mission is really to those whose contact is limited. Okay, lepers, prostitutes, tax collectors, the sick, and the possessed. Okay, nobody really wants to hang around any of them. Maybe the sick get some time, but the other ones really are on the outskirts. There are numerous references to leprosy in the Old Testament, and the disease that we would call leprosy is Hansen's disease, which actually can be reversed. Actually, there are drugs for that. The Hebrew term is Sera'at, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Sera'at, and it's translated in the Latin Vulgate. The Vulgate is the Latin version of the Bible, okay, as the Latin word lepra, L-E-P-R-A. The concern with the Hebrew community would be a skin disease that is contagious. Something like Hansen's disease didn't get better and would prevent the person from being part of the community. Okay, the word that is translated as leprosy in the scriptures really has a broader understanding of skin disorders. Okay, and because there was no, there was a loss of integrity of the body because of the skin disorder, the person was seen as not being able to give proper worship to God. Okay. And as I mentioned above, not every skin disease caused one to be unclean. Ordinary skin blotches, scabs, burns, scalp disorders, baldness, or pimples were not necessarily signs of impurity or uncleanness. So as long as they didn't have signs of being infectious, okay? So, freckles and pimples and stuff like that. Time had said, these things are not the same class, okay? The determination of whether a disease of the skin was infectious or inactive, okay, was determined by the priest, okay? The priest was an arbiter rather than a physician, okay? So he was a judge in terms of this. When this case was doubtful, the person was quarantined for as long as a week. They were confined to the outskirts of the camp or the city, and they had to alert others of their condition by torn garments, long flowing hair, a covered beard, and repeatedly cry, unclean. Okay. Okay, so anybody that didn't know, they would know from the person. The person may very well get better and be able to be judged by the priest as being fit to re-enter the village or city and for worship. Okay, one would think that such an exclusion from the community had to do with medical reasons, to insulate oneself from the contagion that this person seemed to have. However, the actual reason was for religious reasons that the person was excluded. In Israelite law, illness signified cultic unworthiness. We say cultic in terms of worship, unworthy to worship, okay? And consequent exclusion happened there from worship. Israel was a holy people, and they were had to have a moral uprightness as well as physical integrity too. This type of illness couldn't be hid. This physical integrity was also evident in the choice of the Passover lamb that had to be one without blemish. It had to have all its eyes, 4 legs, no limping, no patches of any kind of mange or anything like that, okay? That it had to be have its integrity also. Okay, our psalm this week is Psalm 32. And I'll read Psalm 32, okay, here. Okay, and this is a wisdom psalm. Now, we only have part of it. Only have verses 1, 2, 5, and 11. Okay. Blessed is he whose fault is taken away, whose sin is covered. Blessed the man to whom the Lord imputes no guilt, not guilt, in whose spirit there is no guile. Then I acknowledge my sin to you, my guilt I covered not. I said, I confess my faults to the Lord, and you took away the guilt of my sin. Be glad in the Lord and rejoice, you just. Exalt all the upright, you upright of heart. Okay? So, again, it's a wisdom psalm, and the response is, I turn to you, Lord, in time of trouble, and you fill me with the joy of salvation. Okay? So, be glad and rejoice, you just, and exalt at all you upright of heart. Okay? So, it's a wisdom psalm, but there's also elements of thanksgiving and repentance. In the psalm, there is profound thanksgiving for the removal of sin. Sin and illness were also often closely linked. Okay, if you were sinful, that illness followed, or if you were ill, it was because of sin. The sin of the individual has been removed and covered. This indicates a total forgiveness of the sin. Okay, because it says, "Blessed is he whose fault is taken away, whose sin is covered." Okay, that's our first part. Blessed the man to whom the Lord imputes not guilt, in whose spirit there is no guile. The person is freed of any accompanying guilt because of the sin in this psalm. The sinner here takes ownership of his sin and confesses it fully. There is a sense of being made whole because of this sincere acknowledgement of sin and God's forgiveness of the sin. Okay, it is important, when we go to confession, that we really do confess the sin. Okay, that we really do, take ownership. I did this. I said this. I initially thought this, and it caused me to think this, and I did this, or I didn't do this. Okay, so it's the idea that I am, whatever. I'm a sinner, and I did something wrong. I said something wrong. I didn't speak up and say something, or I didn't do something I should do. Okay, that I take ownership, and also that I really go into a little bit of detail of what it was, okay, that, I did it because of this, and, I am sorry for that, okay, our second reading is from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, so we've been in 1 Corinthians this whole time, okay, we've continued to go through 1 Corinthians, since really the beginning of the year, since the beginning of ordinary time. Okay, this is a reading from 1 Corinthians, reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians, his first letter. Brothers and sisters, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do everything for the glory of God. Avoid giving offense, whether to the Jews or Greeks or the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in every way, not by seeking my own benefit, but that of the many, that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. In this first reading, we have a capsule of really what the Christian life is. Be the light that we are called to be, and do so to glorify God and bring others to know the living God, okay, by our behavior, by our following Jesus, okay, that we keep our eyes on him, and that's the prism through which we lead our life in a way that helps us to, it's just going to keep us on the right track if we're thinking about him all the time, okay? Prior to this part of the letter, Paul dealt with eating food sacrificed to idols. He has already spoken about foregoing his own freedom to eat any type of meat. Okay, he can eat it. It's a sacrifice to an idol, sacrifice to nothing. Okay, that it has nothing to do with him. Okay, but he forgoes that freedom to eat whatever idols, idol meat or other meat, because there are people that see him doing it, and it would be something that might show that it's just not consonant with, respect, that it would offend somebody. Okay, now Paul's not afraid to say the truth, okay, and he's not afraid to speak the truth that might offend somebody. But if it's going to be because people's faith is weak, and to see him eating food sacrificed to idols, meat sacrificed to idols, that if it's not a help to their faith, he's not going to do it. So he's going to forego that freedom to eat it because it's not a help to their faith, okay, to see him eating it. That he doesn't want to be a stumbling block to their belief. Okay, his concern is sharing the gospel of salvation to all. As I mentioned in last week's reading from 1 Corinthians, he is not after any personal gain for sharing the gospel. He does not, by his behavior, want to be a stumbling block to others' belief in Jesus. Driving Paul also is his experience of the risen Jesus on the road to Damascus, as well as in his personal prayer life. Okay? That changed Paul to the level of his being. Okay? He knows, just as the whole thing with the recompense, that he, if he does it, like last week, if he does it willingly, that, it's a ministry that he enjoys. But if he does it out of duty, he knows that he must do this. He has been given this mission, and whether he wants to or not, he must do it. Preach the gospel, share the gospel of salvation with everyone. There are members of this community who have not experienced Jesus yet. Okay, they're part of the community, and they haven't experienced him, obviously, the way Paul has. So he tells them to watch his example, okay, and his example of what a Christian is. So he gives a good example of that. Okay, our gospel, we're still in chapter 1 of Mark, okay, and we'll share that. It's a reading from the gospel according to Mark. A leper came to Jesus and kneeling down begged him and said, "If you wish, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, he stretched out his hand, touched him, and said to him, "I do will it. Be made clean." The leprosy left him immediately, and he was made clean. Then, warning him sternly, he dismissed him at once. He said to him, "See that you tell no one anything, but go and show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing what Moses prescribed. With that will be proof for them." The man went away and began to publicize the whole matter. He spread the report abroad so that it was impossible for Jesus to enter a town openly. He remained outside in deserted places, and people kept coming to him from everywhere. Okay. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. In our Gospel today, we have the continuation of Jesus' healing ministry. Again, we do not know what the disease called leprosy actually is here. We don't know what it is. It has separated this individual from his family and from the community. It is serious, however, because he kneels before Jesus and begs him. Okay, Jesus cures him, but sternly warns him not to tell anyone anything. He is to show himself to the priest and offer the prescribed sacrifice of thanksgiving for this, being brought back into the community. Evidently, he tells everyone he can. Okay, it would be more than just telling a few people about how his healing came about, or just people seeing, gosh, wow, that's great. We thought you'd never be part of the community again. Okay, so, but it's more than that, and he goes about telling everyone. And this, if it was something where he came back and he showed the priest and he just kept it to, the village, okay? It could be contained within that village, but it seems like he goes around and tells people and tells everybody, and, it starts to get around, and, you should come to him too and beg for your sick person, kind of thing, that or bring them, okay? And it makes it so Jesus can't go anywhere without being mobbed by those who are seeking healing. Despite remaining in deserted places, people still come to him everywhere for healing. In this healing, we see, and this is Mark, a characteristic of Mark's gospel, a threefold account of a healing, okay? The description of the illness, the action taken by Jesus, and the completeness to the cure, okay? Remember Peter's mother-in-law, okay? He said she had a fever, okay? Jesus takes her by the hand and raises her up and lifts her up, and then the completeness is that she begins to wait on them, okay? So there are strong emotions in Jesus as he is moved by pity and also warns the leper sternly. Okay, this is given, the man is given two tasks to do after his cure. Don't publicize this, and show yourself to the priest to do the prescribed ritual for readmission into the community. Okay. The man certainly went and showed himself to the priest, okay, because he had everything to gain by that, to be back in the community. But he did not follow Jesus' command not to publicize this. He could have quietly gone back to his village community where it would be evident that this cure happened, but evidently he went beyond this to trumpet his cure to everyone who would listen. Consistent with Mark, Jesus avoids the possibility of adulation that comes from the success of his healings and deliverance from evil. Okay, so he does not want any part of being, any kind of adulation or recognition for this, that he separates himself from that, does not want to be caught up in that, okay? So really, this is making it difficult for Jesus to do his mission by this, okay? It's interesting at the end of Mark's gospel that at the scene where the there's the empty tomb, okay, and then the young man clothed in white, says that he's not here, and that the disciples go and they tell no one anything. Okay, so it's sort of at the end of the gospel, the ones who do follow that are the ones who are really supposed to be sent. Okay, but somebody said something to somebody, because there's a billion Catholics at least, who believe in Jesus. So, this, Jesus shows his sovereignty over disease, and also the man did have faith. He believed, okay? He did believe, even though maybe he made things difficult for Jesus, that he did believe that he could do this, and that Jesus was moved by pity. He knew the law, and even Jesus was bound by the law too, in terms of telling him that, you have to do this. It wasn't like he said, just go in. If they accept you, fine. If they don't, fine. They're going to see you're cured. No, go to the priest, do what you're supposed to do. This is the Leviticus, what was prescribed. Okay. So anyway, we continue. That pretty much ends, or pretty much going to finish this up with chapter 1. I'm pretty sure. Let's double check that. Yes, and that will end chapter 1. So we've had 6 weeks of ordinary time. Well, 5 really, because we began with the second week of ordinary time, where we have had, Mark's gospel, in continuous. Okay, so this is a big deal in terms of, a lot of time was spent. It's revealing who Jesus is. Okay, a big theme in Mark's gospel is, they call it the messianic secret. Okay, who is he? Who is he? Now we as the readers know, okay, but the disciples are still figuring it out. The demons know who he is, okay, and there are other people who have an encounter with Jesus that is healing, like the demoniac, okay? That he is healed, Gennesaret, okay? Remember, they couldn't tie him, keep him contained. That he wants to follow him, okay? But Jesus says, no, go to your family and tell them the great things that God has done for you, okay? The disciples, they're still learning in terms of who this is. Who is this? Okay, so it's a mystery, and for the reader and the hearer, in terms of you and I find that he is the Son of God, and that we hopefully come to believe, more that we read this. God bless. Bye-bye.